Hey men, welcome back to Forge and Refined. In today's video, we're discussing the single most important thing that someone could introduce for supporting both their physical and spiritual strength and health at the same time. I looked past this activity for a lot of years. I looked at it as unnecessary or irrelevant to me. And ever since I started, I have been kicking myself for missing all those years. I'm excited to dive in, but before I do, if you're new here, we love to make videos and have conversations that hang out in this intersection between physical fitness and spiritual formation. So, if you're a man who is even remotely interested in both of those things, then you're in the right place. I encourage you to subscribe, stick around, and hang out with us a little bit. Okay, so as I dive into this topic and reveal this one action you can do, some of you are going to be blown away, and some of you are going to want to cut out to the next video. So hear me out. I know you're not going to regret it. I'm going to tell you what that action is. Then I'm going to explain why it's the most important. And then I'm going to make it both simple and easy to get started. So, the number one thing people are missing from their approach to physical health and spiritual health is this practice of fasting. Now, there are a lot of ways to fast and a lot of stuff that we could talk about. But let me first start by saying that if you're a believer and you're not someone who is regularly fasting and you don't have extreme medical reasons for that, you should seriously reconsider. Fasting has been a pillar part of the Christian faith since the early church, since before the Bible was finished being written. Like every believer in the early church was instructed to fast all day on Wednesdays and Fridays every single week, all year long, and that included their children. This was all laid out in something called the Didache, which is also known as the Lord's teaching through the 12 apostles to the nations. It was written by church fathers, apostles in the first century. Like I said, before some of the letters in our New Testament were written. And so this is an incredibly important document to look at for the life of a believer. The good news is that God knows what he's doing, and there are massive physical and spiritual benefits that come from fasting. So I'm going to outline first a few of the physical ones, and then I'll pop to the other side on the spiritual, and we'll wrap up with how to get started if you're interested in joining the ranks of Christians all across time who have practiced regular weekly fasting. All right, so the first benefit is fat loss, and I don't want you to mistake this with weight loss on the scale. Fasting for shorter bouts has shown to be extremely positive in its effect on targeted fat loss. Many of the clients I work with who are focused on weight loss, they can lose like 25 pounds or more in 90 days while maintaining their muscle mass. Yes, you heard that correctly. They preserve their muscle, and some of them even get stronger and add muscle. They don't waste away like you would imagine. So, if you're curious about how to do this, there's a link in the description below. It's also expected that you'll increase insulin sensitivity, which will defend against diabetes and other metabolic issues like that. Fasting also increases something called autophagy, which simply put is like a cellular regeneration and cleanup process that primarily does most of its work only when you're not eating. Fasting also reduces inflammation, which is a root cause of most disease, and it improves your cognition. So, if you're one of those guys like I was that gets brain fog or you feel sleepy after eating or anything like that, fasting can drastically improve those symptoms. Some of the men I work with complain when I add food back into their rhythm and give them more food because they actually enjoy a clear-headed day at work. As for the spiritual side of things, I believe fasting does a lot for us. In fact, here in my office, I have a list of about 100 ways that fasting can benefit the believer. So right now, I'm just going to name eight really quickly. I think these eight are more universal for all believers when they fast, and possibly less dependent on circumstances or what God is up to or his sovereign will kind of playing out in our fasting. Number one, fasting intensifies the experience of prayer. I find that my heart greatly softens when I am fasted. I am way more vulnerable to tears and what I would call experiencing the heart of God. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like what breaks his heart breaks my heart. What brings him joy brings me joy. Number two is fasting amplifies the power of prayer, which goes along with number three. which fasting reaches and obtains what prayer cannot alone. We got to look at Matthew 17:21. This is like where Jesus was casting out the demon from the boy, and the disciples asked him about it. He said, "This kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting." Then we've got number four, uh, fasting is the greatest faith producer. Number five, fasting will always sow some kind of seed for a harvest of righteousness later. So something that will happen in weeks to come, or months to come, or years to come that you're not going to be yielding right now. Number six, fasting helps master and continually put off the old self. Number seven, fasting subjugates the flesh. And number eight, fasting takes one into humility and out of pride. There are a lot of ways to fast. If you're brand new to any kind of fasting, simply start with skipping a meal. If you feel pretty comfortable with that, try skipping 2 meals, which is basically a 23-hour fast. Going from dinner one night to dinner the next is the ideal. And then once this is something that you can more easily do, extend to a 42-hour fast and then to 72 and on from there. um, I believe from the standpoint of our walk with Jesus and becoming more obedient and faithful believers, the suggestion should be to aim to mimic those early apostles in fasting, and to do that for a full day, twice a week, all year long, and longer periodic fasts when needed or when you feel led. The biggest aspect of making fasting easier to follow through on is actually making sure you get adequate electrolytes in while you're fasting. For me and the men I work with, this is critical because it gives you the energy, the mental clarity, like the resistance against cravings that you need in order to have a successful fast. Most people miss how key electrolytes are and they simply drink tap water or filtered water. And because they're not eating food, which is often well seasoned with sodium and things like that, they're not getting adequate minerals and the sodium that they need to support their fast. So inevitably they wind up tired and dehydrated and hungry and cranky, and craving sodium, which usually manifests in one of the strongest urges to eat chips like you've never felt before. For me, I use a company called Element, LMNT. There's lots of great brands out there to get some really healthy forms of electrolytes, but I would aim for the higher sodium side of things. It's really necessary, and it's going to drastically change the way that you experience your fast. So if you'd like to learn more about how to implement fasting in your own life, you want to do it more easily, or you want to look at any of our other quick start guides, use the link in the description to access our fitness and spiritual growth checklist. It's absolutely free and is access point to all of our guides. So that's it today for fasting. If you found this valuable, give us a quick thumbs up, share it with a friend, or drop a comment below if you have any questions. See you in our next video.